Alright, it is 9:40 a.m. and this is the first time in a while I literally do not see anything that I want to trade in terms of a setup, not even with listed stocks. So what I'm going to do is probably start working on other things, but in the background just have these charts open, and if anything nice pops up I'll be looking at it, and ideally I don't miss it. ARGQ, now this could sell off because it just had a big update the other day. It does show that maybe it can try to uptrend for a few more days, but you can see here it was just a day where it just popped off and then it came right back the other day. This could be something where maybe if it breaks the 92 level, if it breaks VWAP and then the 92 level, maybe it can continue and maybe make a run towards the highs. But at this point, I don't want to mess with it. I don't see anything really too ideal, although I do see support at the bid. This thing could just sell off because again, it was only up one day. As for LCLP, I did have an interest in some kind of a morning panic bounce play. I didn't like the way it traded. It was kind of ugly. I never saw this part here with the wick, and the volume isn't really good either. And there is also a large seller right at this level right here at 90. So it hasn't been anything nice. AMC, sure, it's dropping. Maybe it'll do a reversal at some point, but it was really ideal when it dropped the other day. You can see the wick right here when it dropped right at the previous resistance level, the breakout level. This was a very significant move right there that would have been more ideal. This is a bit random. Nothing with AABB unless it has a panic with a lot of volume. Then at that point I might consider it, but at the moment I have no interest in it. MULN is nothing. DPLS is nothing. So yeah, I think that's the case. I'm just going to be working on other things since I actually don't see anything nice at all. And I'll make an update later if maybe I do see something, but for right now I don't see anything. It is 10:03 a.m. and I want to make an update. I did have an interest with ISPC. It did not work out in getting the trade, but it is doing it. I just don't like the way it did it. It was very ugly, and it just doesn't have really the volume for it to have been something that I would have been a part of really happily. But it looks like it's doing it now. It kind of trades like a OTC with a wide spread, so it's not too ideal, but it is doing it. And why was I interested in it? I had an interest. I placed a buy order at 10:02, which was right here at the 422 level, and I didn't get filled. Right here, I didn't get filled. There were prints going through at 422. I didn't get filled. Let's see if it does a breakout here at 437. Okay, yeah, it kind of trades with the, like a pause, but in theory it's doing it. And the idea with this setup is that it had a nice run up from the 395s as high as the 436, so it has range. And then when you look at this chart right here, you can see that this was like the ultimate breakout level, give or take this 420 level right here, which was the highs right here. And when it finally broke past it, you can see it was a nice move towards the upside. Well, not really here, kind of ugly, but if you look back, this was clearly a level. So when it had a nice move towards the highs from this level here at 396 and it was downtrending, it got to VWAP, it got under it, and then it started to hold itself and consolidate, and I had an interest in it because in theory I could be in at 422, and then it would, worst case scenario, break 420 and then I'll get out. And I didn't want to really play games and like, oh, is the top at 420? Is it going to be at 418 or maybe the 416 level? I didn't want to play games like that. If it wasn't going to work at the 420 level, which is where it had the bottom right here, I had no interest in it. It came back and I had an interest, but as you can see, nothing traded here. And the problem is that right when I wanted to really be in, maybe I hesitated too much, but the level 2 just lifted up and 423 was no longer at the ask. It was like 429, and I was like, I don't want to be at 429. Sure, it's working now, but it didn't have to work out, and I could be in at 429, and then it breaks 420, and I want to be happy so much. So, it just had like that crazy uptrend. I didn't want to be a part of it for that reason. The bid and the ask just lifted up. It started trading all ugly, but when I saw it was still having prints going through at 422, I thought, well, if I could get in at that original price level, I will be interested in buying. And I just didn't get filled. But this one could have been a setup that I could have traded. Now it's in the 440s, which would have been cool. I don't know when I would have gotten out of it. I might have been too scared when it got near the highs and maybe hesitated a little. But maybe in theory, a trend line from here to the corner of that candle, maybe I'd still be, actually, no, I'd probably be out the trade at this point in the 440s. Maybe 440 flat or 439, even though it can keep going. Just because it broke that trend line there. I'd be out in the 440s or at least half my position. Well, that was interesting. It just doesn't have, any volume. At least when I was interested in it. The volume came later, but that was a potential setup. There isn't really anything else right now that I'm too interested in it. This could be an inverse head and shoulders, but it's not that nice looking. It's kind of a random price point on the chart. Maybe if it breaks this level, I'll probably be looking at a DPLS and maybe see what ISPC does over time. But that's what I have for right now. That was a potential setup that I could have been a part of, and it did work out with ISPC. Okay, it is 12:57 and I want to make an update. I did have one trade and I also had one verified cancel trade with XCPL. This one actually offered a nice move towards the upside, but it is very sketchy because it doesn't trade very consistently and it does have a bit of a spread too, especially when I looked at it. At 10:47, I had an entry at this level right here, 10:47, and my limit was 203. Why was I interested in it? I saw the top here around this 208 level, and this is a stock that is up nicely on the day, and it was the kind of play where maybe it could try to break the day high and do something pretty nice, and it did, but I just didn't I just didn't get filled really. And the thing with this one is that it just jumped really quickly. It's probably a low flow OTC. And the reason why I had an interest in getting in at 10:47 when it could have just, topped here and downtrended, why was I interested in buying it? Well, I saw it was a million share bidder show up and then people were hitting the ask. So that made me feel like, okay, a big person showed up, not a big seller, a big bidder showed up and people are hitting the ask. Worst case scenario, it drops to the bidder with a million shares and I can sell into that. So, instead of something like, oh, I'm going to try here and then it fails and then, oh, that sucks, I'm selling at 19 when the thing was at 20. And, this case, I thought, okay, well, I could try to be in at 203. Worst case scenario, I'm out at like 198. I think that's where the big bidder was. So it's, I didn't think it was a bad idea. And worst case scenario, I would cut the trade if it gets to this 18 level, because at that point if it gets all the way down here, I just don't think that the setup is really going to play out, and it just ended up making another top, which actually followed with my $10 risk level. I didn't get filled because it just got too crazy the way it uptrended, and it shot all the way to 22, so that was like a 10% move, and then it got even higher to 24, so that was I think a 20% move. That was pretty impressive. But yeah, the volume isn't really there, but it did make a move, and that was it for that one. This one is also up. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but it's doing things, but I just don't really like these when they don't trade that much volume. But it did offer something here, and I did trade IMPP. This one did not work out. I am salty that I lost 20 pennies, but I'll go over IMPP, and that was buy here at 11:52. Why? The perfect time for a high day breakout is around this 11 to 1 a.m. Not 1 a.m. 1 p.m. level. A lot of them can do a nice high day breakout around this time period, or at least I see a lot of stocks do something like that. And that was what I had in mind with this one, and I was in at 11:52, 176 and a half right here. Why was I in it again? The idea was that it could break the day high and do something really nice towards the upside, especially when you look at what it's done recently. It had the big spike and everything, and it's been kind of downtrending, and then it could make like the first green day, and it could do something really nice, but it wasn't too ideal. It was something where I was going to get out if it was going to look like it's going to break down, and I did get out 11:55 right here at 17608. So right here, and salty that, I bought and sold at the same price, but because of the half penny, I still lost 20 pennies. That's fine, but it didn't work out. I saw when they cut the trend line, and I did have an issue where I tried to sell at 176 and a half, but I found out that's something you can't do with Schwab. You can't put like 176 and a half. It has to be like 176 or 177 because I wanted to be petty and sell for a slight profit or break even. But instead I sold at 176 and I did again lose 20 pennies, but at least I wasn't so petty that I didn't cut the trade when I was supposed to, and I sell at 172 or the 170 level, or maybe I became super hard-headed and I'm still holding it, which isn't ideal at all. So that's the case with that. That was a nice opportunity with, which one was it? Was it this one? No, this one, XCPL. I could have profited from that, especially because of the fact that it's such a low flow OTC. It really sucks that, the one setup I took didn't work, and then these other two that I missed out actually worked, but that's fine. The chances that it continues to happen or that it happens again just gets lower every time that happens. And yeah, that was ultimately the case. It did top in the 440s before it downtrended, and I haven't had much of an interest since, although it is uptrending. I don't like how it kind of lost the volume and the consistency it had previously. So one trade with IMPP, but it didn't work out, unfortunately. I don't think I'll trade anything else, but if I do, I'll make an update later. Alright, it is 1:21 p.m. and I am recording something, and I do feel kind of salty because I didn't trade it as well as I should have. At least I get to blast this on the internet so I can rewatch this and learn from this, but this is actually pretty cool, and I'm glad I took this setup anyway, even though I didn't do very well. But this is MULN, and why was I interested in this? This was like a bull flag pattern, so it had a very nice move from the 226 levels. It got as high as 289 and is up on news, some kind of acquisition deal. I honestly don't know, but I know it's up on some kind of buyout news or whatever. So because it had a very nice move and everything like that, I've seen this, bull flag pattern multiple times before, and I thought this was a potential for that. And I was in at 118. Yeah, it looks like 274. I was in right here. Is it the one with the wick? Yeah, this one with the wick. I was in right here at the wick at 274 and a half. Why? Because it looked like it was going to actually do it right then and there. And it took a few more minutes, but it did eventually play out. It got as high as the 297s. There might be a top at the $3 level. That might be resistance, but at least as of right now, it's well above my entry. And I sold like an idiot. Like, I mean, I guess we're not perfect as humans, right? You try to judge when the top is in, and I can do it sometimes pretty easily, but here's an example where I could have probably have done better if I used the trend line. Let's look at my sell. I got out just barely above it because it looked like it was going to do it right here when I got out at 120, and it just looks like it was going to do it, and then it looks like it was going to not do it, and it was still kind of working. It was kind of sketchy looking, and I got out of it. And maybe if I avoided my judgment and I just cut the trade, if it were to have broken my risk level, which would have been right here, $2.60 right here, because it was a little wick here, I would have been able to have sold it much better. And I just need to get better at that, because honestly, if I sold better here, even though I only traded a very small amount of shares, just 5 shares, I probably could have made back the 20 pennies that I lost on the other one. And why did I only trade 5 shares? Well, at first I thought 10 shares, but I decided to just trade 5. Not really because I'm trying to make money, even though at this point it did work out and I could have been green on the day. Uh, I only traded 5 shares because I just wanted to get the train experience and not put a lot of money on the line. Because this is okay, it's a bull flag, but this isn't like the setups that I tend to want to trade, with more money. It's just a little degenerate, just random day trader patterns, but I saw it and I still wanted to be a part of it, just not with a lot of money. And as of right now, 5 shares, I mean, this just seemed fine. I had in mind 10 shares, but I just changed it to 5 because you never know. This thing could just sell off and freaking halt or do something crazy like that. But that was pretty impressive. I sold at that 120 time period at 275 and a half. So right around here was when I sold. When it looked like it was trying to do it, it was breaking that ceiling at 275. And hey, it got to the 297s, and maybe it can continue, but at this point I'd be out of it for sure. This could be the head of a head and shoulder, shoulder, head, and then that makes a shoulder, but that was pretty cool. And let's just see what 5 shares. You know, in theory, I should have drawn a trend line. Maybe from here. Maybe I would have had the guts to hold through the first green candle here and then sell when it breaks the trend line. And that would have pierced through eventually. Let's just say worst case scenario, I sold at 283 because it broke the trend line right here. And I got out at the very bottom of that wick right there. Might be kind of hard to see at 283. Let's just see if I would have made my money back with 5 shares. Right? That would have been $14.15. And then my original buy at 274. Let's just put 275. Right? So yeah, I would have been green on the day with that trade, and that would have been a sell, a proper sell when the trend line broke right here. So yeah, that was the case with that. And if I wanted to be more risky, sometimes the trend line, maybe in this case, will qualify here. And look how it's trying to hold it, almost like it was there on purpose. You could still be in the setup, and then you'd be getting out if it breaks under it. There's more risk involved, but you're also giving it more patience to work out. That was interesting. That was a pretty cool one. At least I made money on it, but I mean, not much. Let's see if it breaks it. No. That was a learning experience, and if I got paid 6 pennies to be a part of that while I'm doing other things in the background, that's fine. I didn't see this initial run up. When I started to see it, it was around here when I started to see it. It's still following the trend line. And I would cut it, either based off of the first trend line aggressively, worst case I'm out at 283, or maybe this trend line right here and I'd be getting out. If anything, I would maybe sell a portion of the 5 shares, right? It's just such small amounts of shares, but in theory, this is something I can do with 500 shares. I think that's pretty cool. I'll make an update later to show what this one does, but that was an interesting setup. That was a bull flag, and it looks like it's trying to maybe make a run towards $3, which will be really impressive and really bad for any shorts out there too. Alright, it is 10:29 p.m. and I'm here to call it off. Overall, I am down on the day, 14 pennies, and another red day, but hey, another red day that I didn't lose anything, major or anything crazy, and I think that's good. I think that's healthy, and I was on the right track with MULN later in the day. This was the bull flag setup that I had an interest. This one really worked out, and it did get to the threes at some point, but I think the predictable part was definitely this move towards the upside. And I did have a buy with IMPP. This one did not work out. I was going for a high day breakout. I did a good job cutting the trade when that did not play out. Again, my sell on IMPP was at 11.55, which was this red candle right here. And, it did fail. It didn't actually turn around, which was fine. And then ISPC, if I were to have been in this one, if I were to have been filled at that point in 10:02 a.m., right here, I would have actually have made like $10, even with 40 shares of ISPC, because of how much of a low float stock this is. And this was a pretty cool one. And then on top of that, MULN again really worked out. Could have made a lot more. I could have been profitable on the day. And then I did miss that one setup, I believe, with that OTC. I don't have it saved anymore. I forgot which one of these it was, but hey, yeah, fortunately, it's a red day, but at least one of the trades I took actually worked out. It just didn't sell that well, and definitely, it's going to be something that I'm going to have to continue to develop, which is selling based off of a trend line. It kind of takes the whole human emotion out of it. Sometimes you can judge a stock and make a good call, but in this case with MULN, especially with me, who, I believe are much better trading OTCs with. I have more experience trading OTCs compared to listed stocks. Just thought that it wasn't going to really do it that nicely, but it did offer something. So, yeah, that's about it. I look forward to tomorrow, God willing, and I have to keep getting better and trade according to trend lines and make sure I'm sized appropriately.